are one step closer to the end of an era in Israeli politics. The country's longest-serving Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, appears to be on his way out. Centrist politician Yair Lapid has pulled together a diverse group of rivals for a new coalition government. Right-wing religious nationalist Naftali Bennett would serve as Prime Minister for the next 2 years. Word of the agreement, which still needs Knesset approval, brought celebrations in Tel Aviv.
Tonight we are celebrating. It started as a protest to encourage the government of change, and now Lapid has announced that he has a new government.
We have had several elections that were endless, and now we are hopeful for a new stable government.
So let's go live now to Jerusalem and journalist Elliot Gotkin. Good to see you, Elliot. So what is the latest on this, and what happens next with this historic but fragile national unity government?
It's a very fragile kind of rainbow coalition in waiting, isn't it? It's mind-boggling in its breadth, ranging from far left through the centre, through even to the right of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and as you say, for the first time ever, incorporating a party representing Arab citizens of Israel. We saw people celebrating on the streets of Tel Aviv there. Clearly, there are many others in Israel who will not be celebrating this morning. Indeed, we've heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu deriding this as a left-wing government. A spokesman for Netanyahu's party, Likud, tweeted earlier today, this is Miki Zohar, words to the effect of the left is celebrating, but this is a very sad day for the state of Israel, adding that Bennett, Saar, Naftali Bennett, Saar, this is the leader of the right-wing New Hope Party, and Shaked, this is Naftali Bennett's number 2, should be ashamed. But certainly it is historic, whatever your political persuasions are, and it's obviously all over the newspapers. Now, it's traditional for the person with the mandate, when they speak to the president of Israel, to say, it's in my hands. So that is something that the newspapers have been playing on in terms of their headlines. This is Maariv, one of the leading paid-for newspapers in Israel. The headline there, it's in his hands, with a picture of Lapid, Bennett and Mansour Abbas, the leader of the Ra'am Islamist Party, signing that coalition agreement. Similar headline in Yediot Achronot, another leading paid-for newspaper in Israel. It's in their hands, with a picture of Lapid and Bennett, who I should say do have a good personal relationship. They were in governments together, led, of course, by Prime Minister Netanyahu in the past. They do get on well at a personal level. And this is Israel Today. This was owned by the late casino magnate Sheldon Adelson. You actually see the news of this coalition almost relegated to a smaller story, the main focus here being the new president of Israel, Isaac Herzog. But the headline in this newspaper, which is pro-Netanyahu, saying Lapid succeeds, Netanyahu hasn't given up. Now, this newspaper often referred to as the Bibiton, which is a portmanteau of the nickname of Prime Minister Netanyahu and the word newspaper in Israel. So perhaps ominous words there, but also perhaps a warning that Netanyahu really hasn't given up. And, of course, he will do everything in his powers to try to derail this coalition, either before it comes into being or after. But, of course, the other main aspect of this, and of real historical significance, is that for the first time ever, a party representing Israel's Arab citizens is going to be in a coalition government. The leader of the Ra'am party, Mansour Abbas, speaking just moments after he signed that agreement.
I just signed an agreement with Yair Lapid so that he can form a government after we've reached a critical mass of agreements on issues that will serve the interests of Arab society and provide solutions to urgent problems Arab society faces in various fields.
Now, providing more resources for Israel's Arab citizens, perhaps trying to tackle high crime rates and murder rates in their cities won't be too controversial for the coalition government. So that's perhaps something that Mansour Abbas will get out of joining this coalition. By and large, though, this, as I say, this kaleidoscope of a coalition will seek to avoid issues that divide them. So don't expect any progress on Palestinians or on settlements, things like that. Instead, the focus will will be on passing a state budget. We didn't even have one passed in 2020 in Israel. They have to pass the budget for 2021 and 2022. They'll focus on the economic recovery post the coronavirus pandemic. And as a side note, the last lot of restrictions relating to coronavirus were lifted earlier this week. And they will also focus on trying to heal some of the divisions that have emerged in Israeli society, or perhaps been thrown even wider in Israeli society under the leadership of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. But just finally to say, of course, he is down. He is closer than he's ever been to leaving office in the past 12 years. But he's not out just yet. And until it's over, it's not over. Rosemary?
Exactly. We'll watch to see what his next move may be. Elliot Godkin bringing us the very latest live from Jerusalem. Appreciate it. With me now is Reuven Hazan, Professor of Political Science at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. Thank you, sir, for joining with us.
Good morning, Rosemary.
Good to see you. So how likely is it that Benjamin Netanyahu will find a way to derail this historic New Deal before it's even approved by the Knesset? And what possible options remain for him?
Well, I'm not trying to escape the answer, but it's 50-50. This is the first time in a long time that somebody else has been able to try and cobble together a government. But let's remember that this majority government is going to be 61 out of 120 seats in the Israeli parliament. That's a razor-thin majority. It's made up of 8 different parties. In other words, for Benjamin Netanyahu to try to pick away at it and bring it down even before it is sworn in about 11 or 12 days, it's like low-hanging fruit. It's quite easy for him to do it, especially since the parties go from the extreme right to the extreme left. It's easy to find an issue that'll rip him apart.
Let's talk more about that, because it is a truly politically diverse coalition, which includes for the first time an Arab-Israeli party, along with the extreme right, as you point out, and the extreme left. And the only thing they truly agree upon right now is getting rid of Netanyahu. But then what? How fragile could this coalition of 8 parties prove to be? And what would they be able to agree upon, apart from a budget going forward?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. What brings all of them together, parties that are more to the right than Netanyahu and parties that are more to the left of Netanyahu, is their dislike for Netanyahu. Now, once he's out of office, the glue will begin to fray. And the question is, how long will they survive? Now, if Netanyahu would resign, then they would probably collapse a lot sooner, but he has already stated that he's not going anywhere. He's staying as leader of the opposition, and he's going to challenge them day in and day out, which means that he will still provide a little bit of glue to keep them together. Now, when we look at this wide coalition government, anything that happens on the security front, such as another barrage of missiles from Gaza, could rip them apart so easily, because there are those who want to respond forcefully, and those, as you said, the first time ever that an Arab party is sitting in government in Israel, that'll have a much more conciliatory approach. So beyond hating Netanyahu and needing a budget, which we haven't had in over 2 years, how can this coalition stay together? That's $1 million question.
Indeed, and for however long the new coalition does last, Netanyahu will, of course, be on the sidelines, as you point out, as leader of the opposition, watching for an opportunity to get back into power. But right now, how significant is it that after 12 years in office, he's isolated and apparently has very few allies?
Let's look at it historically. Netanyahu was first elected in '96. That was 25 years ago. He lost quickly after 2.5 years and was kicked out. And then his party, the Likud party, came back. But under Ariel Sharon, Netanyahu has shown us that even in opposition, and in those days, his party had only 12 seats. Now they have 30. He can fight in the trenches in the parliament. He can challenge the sitting government. He can make their day-to-day trying to handle the governing of this country a nightmare. In other words, just as Elliot said, it isn't over till it's over, and you can never count Netanyahu out. The one thing we need to also focus on is that he has a court case. And in that court case, whatever happens there will have a direct impact on politics. If we see that he's about to be guilty, then he's finished. But if we see the court case begin to unravel and he might be innocent, he will come back full force.
That's going to take some time, though, isn't it? I mean, as we know, it all moves very slowly in Israel when it comes to corruption trials like this or any trials. So how soon do you think we would know how vulnerable he is?
This will take at least a year to two. And then again, we go back to the main question of, can this new wide coalition, multi-party coalition, survive until we have a final decision in the courts? As long as Netanyahu is around, they just might stick together. As soon as Netanyahu disappears, and it could be for political or for legal reasons, there's nothing to keep these people together. It's even worse. If Netanyahu was to leave, his own party, the Likud, could turn around and form an alternative government tomorrow. The parties that are not sitting with Netanyahu are doing this on a personal issue, not on a political issue. So those more to the right, and the right wing did win the elections in Israel, those more to the right would be happy to form a government with the Likud and jettison all the extreme left elements, but not under Netanyahu. If he goes, his party could be back in power tomorrow.